Good morning and welcome to the latest in our In Conversation series, where we shine the spotlight on various different entrepreneurs and ask them to share their stories with us. I'm Sarah Austin, I'm the founder of the Really Helpful Club. This morning, I'm going to be talking to Steve Folwell. Steve is the founder of Muddy Trowel. And it's going to be fascinating talking to Steve because he hasn't just founded one business, he's founded two. One is a business called LOVESPACE, and which he grew very successfully and managed to raise. And then the other business, which we're going to talk more about this morning, is Muddy Trowel, which he founded back in 2020. There we are. Steve, good morning. It looks like it's as sunny with you where it is with me. Whereabouts are you?
It's glorious. It's in I'm in St Albans. It is. Yep. If I stood outside, I'm not quite outside. If I stood outside, it'd be a bit chilly, but it feels beautiful inside.
Perfect April spring morning, isn't it? Where
lovely,
sort of sunny days, sunny starts to the days, and then sort of chilly evenings and stuff. So anyway, but perfect weather for Muddy Trowel, and looking forward to hearing more about that in just a second. What I was explaining was that this is our In Conversation With series, where we talk to various entrepreneurs, hear about their businesses, hear about what inspired you to get started with your business and how you've grown it, and to share with us candidly some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. Now, we're really lucky because you haven't just founded one business, you founded two businesses. So you've got tons of experience to share with us. And I think that will be really, really important to sort of shine the spotlight on that. So, I mean, if we could just begin with Muddy Trowel and ask you what was the inspiration behind it?
The genesis really was, we are a year old this Friday, in fact, so tomorrow. We're getting the team together for the first time because we've not been together at the same place for a year since we started. So we're in my back garden, socially distant, 6 of us tomorrow. And if you cast your minds back a year, we were right in the middle of the first lockdown. I just had COVID. I was stuck in bed recovering from it. Heard on the radio that the gardening industry as a whole was in kind of pretty dire straits. The growers who produce all the lovely kind of annual plants that we're so used to around this time of year in June had to put everything on ice because the garden centres weren't open. And as a result, there was about 600, 700 million worth of product that was going to go onto a compost heap somewhere. I'm a really keen, I would say pre-amateur gardener. I'm forcing myself to get better every day. And really, because otherwise I've been twiddling in lockdown last year, got in touch with a few friends and said, look, do we think we can get something together so that we can solve this problem and start delivering plants from growers to customers who kind of need those plants and obviously got more time to spend gardening. And so we did something really quite, incredible looking back on it. From the first conversation, we founded a business, got the brand together, hired a team, launched a website, got hold of some nurseries that needed help, and delivered our plants within 2 weeks of me having that sort of putting that first kind of call to arms out to the team. And that's really where it first started. It was it's certainly catalyzed by COVID and its kind of genesis. Having said that, it's an area that I've been thinking is very interesting to launch a disruptive business into for a while. It's got many of the characteristics of other industries that have undergone pretty rapid disruption. Largely physical retail, obviously. We all know the garden centre experience, although in many cases those garden centres have stopped becoming primary places for selling plants, but are selling all other kinds of stuff at you the same time. And the digital disruptors that have launched, or sort of the digital kind of e-commerce players, I won't say any of them are that disruptive, that have launched, are really just replicas of the garden centre experience. And my view was that there was nothing really that catered for people who love plants, really wanted to get into gardening, didn't have the time or necessarily the knowledge to get involved. And gardening can feel very intimidating. I mean, I've killed probably more plants than I can remember right at the beginning of my my gardening life. And often you think you killed them and you haven't, of course, and it's just a seasonal thing. So I wanted to sort of share some of that experience and think about how we could offer a product to people that was kind of joyful, was sustainable, because a lot of gardening actually, the sort of the secret is, whilst it is nature, it's actually not that sustainable. So we really wanted to go for sustainability at the core of this, and really simple, so people could easily plant up our plant kits. You get a selection of plants and compost, a pot, an eco-friendly pot. You put that together, create a lovely kind of blooms. In fact, I've got some. Here we go. There's a couple of window. If I can point in the right direction, a couple of window boxes.
They are absolutely
beautiful,
because I know you've delivered some to some of the care homes that we've introduced you to, and what has been lovely is watching some of the photos that those care homes have then shared of, again, I mean, so just for joy, if you think, so many of us have been deprived from seeing, older members of a family during this last year. It has been a really cruel time, I think, for within families. And for a family member to be able to send something like a Muddy Trowel plant kit is just, it is just like your strapline says, it's pure joy delivered, isn't it? And I'm delighted to hear that, because that's and it is the reinforcement we get back from customers from really early on. And I guess my previous business that I started was in storage, and storage, you're dealing with people's lives. Often it's movement, it's and it can be divorce, can be death, can be very difficult bits, and the emotion primarily you get back from customers then is relief. Someone, oh wow, someone's come and helped me, and it's much simpler and dealt with this problem that I have. This is very different. This is, you do get smiles, but you get joy. We get lovely spontaneous reviews from customers, and lovely emails. So just so this sense that we are actually kind of living up to the promise of delivering joy is great for us the team. For a small business, it's really important to feel that you're doing something that makes a difference to your customers. I think what you're also sort of indirectly covering there is that sense of your why as well, isn't it? And because it ticks so many boxes. It's a gift, which of course is joyful to the person who is giving it. It is wonderful for the person who's receiving it. And then of course it also helps with things like well-being. We all love to nurture something, see it grow, see it develop. And as you say, not all of us are great gardeners. So the idea that you can have something that's quite simple, you can watch it grow and turn into something that's really pretty and gives you something and makes you that little bit closer to nature, which again, COVID it's changed our perspective on ourselves and our priorities. And I think you are, absolutely in the moment in terms of fulfilling that need that people wouldn't necessarily have thought, I need to go out and buy a plant kit, but actually the joy that it then brings when you discover it is enormous and fulfills, I think, a lot of gaps.
I couldn't agree more. I think that the well-being piece is anyone who's spent a lot of time gardening, and part of the reason I do a lot of gardening is I find it a great release from the stresses of running businesses and just in general, general life. It's wonderful to get a little bit of dirt under your fingernails. Some of the failures are as interesting as the successes. And feeling like you're getting a little bit better all the time, a little bit of knowledge that you can pass on to people. I think the key is not to make it intimidating. I think too much with gardening, it can be a bit clubby, and it's a bit like wine and a bit like food, where the more knowledgeable you are, the more you want to make it look difficult. And there are some people who want it to look difficult. We're not about that. As we grow more knowledge as a business, we want to make it easier for people. So I think if people can kind of get more confidence with gardening, it's a really wonderful bridge into spending more time outdoors, more time connected with nature. And it's so good as well, for pollinators and the environment in general.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? And actually, it's so true what you say, that it's like some of those other industries, as you quite rightfully point out, that it's got a lot of acronyms, a bit of sort of a few Latin names thrown in, and I think sometimes when you go to a garden centre, you just it's quite intimidating. You sort of go down these different rows, and you think, God, what is it I want? where am I going to fit that into my garden? How is it going to work and things? And I think, again, anything that simplifies something is just a win-win, isn't it? An instant hit for you. So listen, that was the inspiration. And I think, I mean, just amazing. I mean, having launched Really Help the Club, I know how long it took to go from idea to, to concept to then delivering it. But to deliver something in 14 days is, absolutely incredible, and to do it so successfully too, not just to do it. So obviously very early stage still, 1 year anniversary tomorrow, but what's your vision, a year from now? What do you think you'll be celebrating?
Well, I hope we're celebrating, if we look back on next year, I kind of really hope that kind of joy that we've delivered has multiplied up, 10, 100 times, and that's reflected sort of in our growth as well. Our vision is to be the place that amateur and aspiring gardeners come to learn about growing, and for us to deliver as much joy as possible to people's outdoor spaces. We don't care whether people have got big gardens or not. I mean, many of our customers only have balconies, or have got very small kind of outdoor spaces, but that doesn't mean you can't spend more time there, and it doesn't mean that you can't connect with plants, whether that's flowers or herbs or other things. So we would like to build the brand. We'd like to build it kind of more broadly in gardening over time. I think there's a big opportunity. It's a very big industry. It's many billions of pounds of spend on plants and other equipment outdoors. And there aren't many kind of brands that I really think stand for what we stand for in the market. I think it's quite a parochial, has been quite a parochial industry of many different brands over time. So we want to grow. I think if you think of Habitat, I know that brand is now sort of gone through a full cycle, but you think about what Habitat did for kind of indoor design and democratizing, that's the kind of area we'd like to, that's where we'd like to sort of head with the brand. But having run a startup business before, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. It's every single thing we send out, it's got to be fantastic. We need to do better at acquiring customers, every week, every day. So we don't look too far ahead. But if we're still here and we've grown really well and people are still loving the product in a year's time, we'll be delighted.
Yeah, it's excellent. And I guess it also quite a fragmented industry as well. If you think about the, think about the nurseries as well that you're working with.
Massively fragmented, and also one of those, a bit like, our two key partnerships really are with nurseries and with drivers. And I've worked a lot with drivers, with LOVESPACE, and you look at that, it's a hugely fragmented industry of brilliant people, very, very good, hardworking, skillful people who work as both as couriers, drivers, removals people. And then you look at nursery people, really crafts, a real craft. Again, fragmented, tend to be lots of little family businesses around, really kind of proud of what they do, but haven't really scaled overall. You feel that there's got to be an opportunity, and we work directly with British nurseries. So if we can sell more, they sell more. I think that's an exciting area for us to look at over time, because you're right, it's very fragmented still, gardening.
Well, again, it just gives them another route to market, which is again your another platform for them, which is excellent. So now you've talked a little bit about LOVESPACE, during the course of our conversation so far, but I think what makes you really different to all the other people that we've talked to in this series is that you have founded more than one business, and here you are, already very successfully on venture number 2. But it's fascinating to learn, what's the inspiration? You can see sometimes why somebody has the dream, the goal, the long time ambition to found a business, but what is it in you that drives you to found the second, even perhaps the third in the future? Is what makes you different, and what is it that you identify out there that triggers that light bulb moment to launch the second business and so forth?
Well, I think I'm probably my approach is a bit unusual. I mean, it was a long time before I got involved with LOVESPACE, and I as I say with LOVESPACE, I'm sort of the Ringo to a Paul and John at LOVESPACE. I was one of the 3 co-founders, but the other 2 got their idea really, and I joined and ran that from the beginning, because they'd already had very successful startups before. In fact, both of those guys, Brett and Carl, are both serial entrepreneurs, and I've taken a lot of inspiration from having worked with them, Brett Hacker and Carl Lamel. I had, before doing this, I had a list of 30 things, and actually when I was thinking about LOVESPACE, I had a list of 30 things, and I sort of have loads of slightly crazy ideas, and I whittle them down over time until I get down to sort of 3 or 4 that I think are quite interesting, and then I go and speak to some people about it and see if other people might be interested in doing them with me. This one was specifically catalyzed, obviously, by an event, by lockdown up front. Why do I do it? Why am I interested in doing it? Because I've just had so much fun doing it. I had a lovely career beforehand. I was a management consultant at McKinsey for 7 years, advising big corporates. I then worked in media, both at ITV, and then spent 5 years as director of strategy at the Guardian Media Group. Sort of pretty serious corporate media jobs, and I really enjoyed those. But there was a bit of me, particularly kind of the creative element, and that was, I felt it was an itch I needed to scratch. And once I'd done it with LOVESPACE, because startups really are all about really fast problem solving, creativity, and getting a really good team around you, but it's the problems you get thrown up every day you got to solve. You're always on. It's always stimulating. You never sit through a 3-hour meeting. My life used to be dominated by sitting through 3-hour meetings. The only 3-hour meetings I'd ever sit through now are board meetings, and actually they kind of tend to be pretty important and useful. The board at LOVESPACE is a good example of that. So you're spending your time either doing stuff, you're out there. In my case, I'm occasionally driving the van. I'm certainly putting plants together. That's fun and varied. I'm solving problems all the time, and I'm working with people who are really really brilliant, energetic, excited. It's everything is to sort of shoot for rather than defend, and I think that's that's really exciting. So I'm sorry, that's a pretty roundabout answer, but I just enjoy it. I like starting stuff, and I like the challenge of potentially failing. I mean, I think that's one of the things I always felt about the safety of corporateness to a degree is I always felt a little bit kind of guilty of talking about successes, because in many ways, working with brands that are great and big, it's quite difficult to fail properly. Whereas I think with a startup, the thing is you're likely to fail and you're likely to look a bit stupid. So when you succeed and when the team achieves something, it's even more exciting. The buzz is even greater.
I completely agree. It's a really interesting thing, and it's what a lot of the people that we have talked to in this series have talked about, is actually learning to fail, but also learning to succeed is a really important concept, because actually we I think become quite programmed to understand how to fail and how to bounce from that, but how to accept success as well is again almost a challenge in itself. So I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about enjoying the challenge and enjoying the process of starting and setting up a business, and how different it is from the corporate world.
And you must have had that, Sarah, as well. You're a bit like a weather vane where, some days you feel like it's pointing towards success, and then the wind changes and you're pointing to failure the next day, and it's just, you're sort of not, you can never quite center yourself, whereas I think in kind of other walks of life, you can get very locked into one way of thinking, and that's what's exciting about it.
Completely. It is more of a travelator, an upward escalator, hopefully, if you're in the corporate world. But as you say, it doesn't come with a thrill. It doesn't come with the same. The sense of win is different. The sense of success, the sense of satisfaction is very different. And that's, I came from a corporate background initially, and I don't think I was prepared for that. The things that are really fulfilling are not necessarily what you think they will be when you first set out. And it can't just be about the profit and loss statement. It has to be about the joy that you do bring to others. And coming back to what you were talking about, I think right at the beginning, is the why. If you've got the why centered, and the why, we're essentially about finding solutions and offering solutions to people's daily needs, and and their wider needs, is actually, when you fulfill that need, wow, is that fulfilling?
Yeah, exactly. And we see it in the reviews. In fact, I've got a slide from one of our investment decks, and it's not just the reviews are great. it's that the reviews also, they say, this was really simple, or I love the sustainability, or this brought joy. They sort of repeat back to us exactly what we want to be doing, and that makes it even better.
Well, it's reaffirming and reinforcing, which again means you're on the right path. Now, we've got a few people on here, so do please, and that you've waved at us, so thanks for that. But if you've got any questions, please put them into the comments, and I'm sure Steve will be delighted to answer those.
Absolutely.
The other thing is we will share this on IGTV afterwards, and what we'd like everyone to do is to then cascade and forward that onwards, because not only is this really interesting from the purpose of what Muddy Trowel does, but I think Steve is sharing some really, really interesting insights about the life and the journey of an entrepreneur, and hugely important for anyone that is thinking about starting a business or looking to learn from someone who has done it. So we've talked obviously about the joy and the upside, and and the challenges and the positive challenges, but again, as a multi-entrepreneur, maybe you could talk about the challenges, the hardest bit, and if you're prepared to do it, talk about some of the mistakes as well, because actually, we all make them, and if we can make a few less, then actually that is the recipe towards success.
Yeah, and I think we've learned a lot from, or at least I've been able to learn a lot from kind of the previous experience with LOVESPACE that's informed the way we've gone about things at Muddy Trowel. I mean, I think the biggest failure, in a way, for turn it around, kind of the biggest tip I can give is you just can't wait for people to come. It is not, it's not build it and they will come. The biggest mistake I see, well, two biggest mistakes I see people make right at the beginning. One is they think the idea is the business. It's just absolutely not. Everyone, there are loads of people who've had a similar idea. Loads of people thought about doing a gardening startup. I'm sure many people would have maybe listening to this and saying, oh, that's exactly the idea that I had 2 years ago. That counts for nothing. You got to go and do it. And the second thing, once you've done it, is you've got to sell it. And I see loads of people, and we made that mistake to a degree at LOVESPACE to begin with, where we thought we've got a lovely product, we're marketing, we just need to sit here, why aren't they coming? And we used to get very down. There'd be days when the phone wouldn't ring, and we'd say, oh, they're not coming. And then you just realize, well, yeah, they're not going to come. You've got to go out and find them. And I think that getting to your first 100 customers, which is a bit of a cliche, is so critical. And it doesn't really matter how you do that. They can be friends, they can be they can be friends of friends. It can be flyering. It can be literally knocking on doors. It can be hanging around outside competitors. We tried everything, but it's going out there and believing you've got to sell your business. You've got to go and connect with customers and convince them to use your product, which is lovely, but they don't. That is the bit that you need to really accelerate up front, because you can solve many of the other problems. How do I fulfill it? Will the quality be there? How do we deal with the tech? You can solve for loads of those problems once you got the customers. You can never solve for not having customers. And that's one thing I kind of learned early on. I mean, we obviously tried a lot of stuff, but I think we were a bit complacent that we just had to be roughly marketing in the right place and people would turn up. With Muddy Trowel, we were much more deliberate about it upfront, and the team generally, we had more people in marketing, in terms of effort in marketing, much more than we did in ops, and tech. Whereas with LOVESPACE, we spent more time, probably too much time up front, thinking about the tech and the operational side of the business, and not enough time on marketing. And then in terms of kind of the downside, when does it get really tricky? I think you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about how resilient you and the team can be when you start getting the customers in, and then you have to fulfill. And that's then kind of the problem that you knew you wanted to have, but that's the bit that's most draining, I would say. It's running to catch up. It's working, all hours, being in warehouses on, as I used to be on kind of bank holiday, Mondays, making sure that we had all of the stuff that we need to send back to customers so they could go back to university. Literally getting in the van and spending hours on the road, and then coming back and then doing all the fundraising stuff, at the end of the day, because you have to, and there's no choice. And then sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and say, did I really sign up for this? But then you've only got yourself to blame, because no one else created the business. No one else decided it was a clever idea to kind of do it, with the team structure that you got. So it's all on you, but you then learn a lot about yourself and how far you're prepared to go to to make sure it works. And I think I and the teams I work with, we tend to have a pretty strong sense of duty. So if we sold something, we've told someone that we've got a fantastic product that's going to be delivered within 5 days. In Muddy Trowel's case, or in LOVESPACE's case, we'll return your items to you anywhere in the UK the next day. Then we've got to do it. And if that really drains us and exhausts us, we do it. And if it hurts, then I'm a big believer as well. If it hurts, then you fix it. Because if you try and avoid the hurt, if you try and ignore the negative reviews you get, if you try and not compensate people properly if there's a problem, which there will inevitably be in early days of complex startups, if you avoid the pain, then you don't fix it. You just sort of glide on by, and then eventually it catches up with you. So I think that's those have been the most difficult times. Is the physical nature of scaling a business, the amount of work it really takes when you're growing 20 or 30 times in a month, something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, you've shared so many interesting things in that, and and I guess most importantly that it always comes back to you.
Yeah.
And in a world where there's so much benefit to digitization and scale and the reach and social media, but with that also comes a spotlight. That means that and everybody will have issues, mistakes. That's human. That's doing business. But it's the manner in which you deal with that, which is the making of a business and the making of a reputation. Yeah,
and I'm again I've worked with brilliant people in my career who are kind of very strong, but also very they're great listeners and great learners. And so I learned from Brett and Carl at LoveSpace, and people I've worked with at LoveSpace. A guy called Mitch in Ops would come to mind. I worked for Carolyn McCall at ITV, which was really inspiring, working directly with Carolyn Fairburn at who was then CBI and went on to CBI DG at McKinsey. So I've been very lucky to work with some brilliant people, and taken a lot from seeing how they operate.
Well, I think there's so much that we could talk about, but I just want to conclude with one last question, because I'm conscious of time, is to talk about your experience of raising funds, because you alluded to it just now that as well as running the day business, getting out there, marketing, fulfillment, and so forth, also there is the business of the fundraising and the capital behind the business. I know that you've raised funds successfully before and through different channels. I think for anyone that's watching this either now or later, it'll be very interesting for them to understand your learnings and insights from that. And because again, I think there's huge amounts of insights to share, but there's also, some really key mistakes to avoid in that process, and particularly sort of early along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of, I've raised about £8-9 million at LoveSpace, and we're very early days, and actually much more efficient in a way with Muddy Trowel. We've raised about 250k so far. The first thing I'd say when raising money is it's a responsibility. You're taking cash from an investor, and they expect a return from it, but it's not an obligation to do what they want, right? So I see it as back to that duty word again. I would love, with every business I do, to be able to provide a really nice return to anyone who invests in my businesses. And I do carry that thought a lot with me when I think about what we're going to do next in the next round, and it does actually help motivate me. Part of that is because I try and raise from people I like and I respect, and also in a way that is very straightforward. So, whilst we have got a very grand vision, I do try and sell, the real business that exists at that time, what it's currently doing, what the economics are, where we want to take it over a short period of time. We tend to be pretty analytical. We outline what it costs to get a customer, how much we can make out of a customer in a period of time, how often they're going to return, so that, what's known as the unit economics, and then we have a business plan that we set out. And then all I'm asking for is whether people are interested in investing against that business plan, which we hope to meet for the next period of time. I've raised, the mistakes we've made on fundraising is just done too many rounds. We've never raised quite enough. So we always, LoveSpace is now a nicely profitable business. but we probably raised 3 times on the basis with investors that on the next time we would be a profitable business. So as a result, we never raised quite enough to get to profitability and had to keep going back. And it was great because we had some very supportive investors, but in retrospect, it would have been probably better to have raised more at slightly less punchy valuation that we went out and raised at. So, and that's the advice that everyone gets is, if you've got cash, raise it. Don't worry too much about the valuation. I think that's oversimplistic advice, but there is certainly something to the point that you don't want to be spending your life perpetually raising. A, because it takes up a lot of your time, and B, because you never really then have a very clear plan. You have lots of investors who've joined at different times. So I think if I look back, I would still like to have raised the same amount of money, but I probably wanted to do it in kind of 2 or 3 chunks as opposed to in sort of 5 chunks that we did it last time. I just one of the point that might be interesting to the kind of group is we did crowdfunding, which for a business like LOVESPACE, consumer business, is great, and we might look at it for Muddy Trowel as well. And I think crowdfunding is a very legitimate way of raising money, but you've got to bear in mind if you're doing crowdfunding, your reputation is really out there, so you better be. And quite rightly, you should be out there. And I think some of the raises that are on there aren't as kind of strong in terms of kind of evidence analysis as others. I think it's really important for people to recognise if you're going out and raising money for kind of less professional investors, that comes with a kind of responsibility to be very upfront and honest about what you're doing. Sorry, that was just kind of sort of slightly rambling answer to your question.
No, it is so interesting. Well, it comes back to the advice you would give someone for thinking about a business and launching it and scaling it and so forth, is that again, those lessons learned are really interesting, because I don't think anyone really, until they've gone through the process of raising funds, understands how time consuming it is. And also, as you say, those the idea of bringing someone into your business in that way is quite a big deal. And as you say, it comes with responsibility, but you're also letting someone in as well. And so that notion of trying to do it not too many times, I think is really valuable advice. So, so thank you for that.
Not at all. So one other thing, you asked the question right up front, make sure that when you set your business up, you do it properly. And when you do that first round, you do it properly. So take advice up front, work with one of the very many kind of reputable kind of finance groups or someone like Seed Legals to get that bit right up front, particularly if you're working with a co-founder, particularly if you're doing kind of things like team equity or sweat equity. I see a lot of issues, a little bit further down the line when people have kind of done it on a handshake or not on a wink, and then there's but didn't we say that the valuation was actually this much, or I didn't realize that you were including that person's investment in the original cap table, and things can get just lack of clarity breeds both confusion and suspicion, I think. So you just got to be super clean, anything, and not complex. Don't do anything. It's just not worth it for a small business. Don't do any kind of clever structures, in my view. Just keep it really simple, and then when you start to speak to more sophisticated investors, then maybe you can start thinking about clever structures. But just really easy set up. It's very cheap to do set up your business on Companies House, and get registered to begin with. But then first time you do any kind of incentive plan, or you're bringing in the first investors, it's worth taking some advice, I'd say. Really
important, thank you. So I'm going to finish. I mean, you have shared so many insights, and I think being just incredibly candid and helpful. So, and I know we have got so many people in our network that would love to connect with you on, as partners for Muddy Trowel, but also to be able to learn from you in terms of fundraising and just the experience of running a business and doing it successfully and being prepared to share with others as well. So I'm going to ask you to leave us with your one final top tip. If you were allowed to share one insight of, for someone thinking about starting a business, what would be the one single thing you'd say, okay, this is the thing that you've got to listen to and obey by and go for it?
Sell.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. Just get out there. sell.
I completely agree. And I remember when I was launching Really Help the Club, one of the things that, you know, I talked to other people that I was thinking about business. I remember my husband saying to me, go out into a field and shout about what you're doing. And if you can't do that, then you can't start your business. And it's true. If you can't be proudly out there promoting it, talking about it, explaining the why, explaining the attributes, then actually it's going to fall foul, you know, fairly quickly. So, but it's selling, but selling, you know, a sophisticated sell.
Yeah.
And so, Steve, thank you so much. I mean, you have shared so much with us. I've been jotting notes down, so many, I almost don't know how to sort of summarize it, but I think, you know, it would, your key message obviously is, you know, it's definitely not build it and they will come. Remember, you have got to go out and sell, and guess what, sell. But to be able to learn from others and to be prepared to learn about it yourself. And I thought also that what you were talking about is in terms of problem solving, creativity, and having a great team around you is incredibly important as well. So, I mean, so much to share, and I hope that everyone will have enjoyed this. And please watch it afterwards on IGTV. And if you've enjoyed it, please don't forget to comment and then to share forward as well. But Steve, thank you very much. Enjoy the sunny day in St Albans.
Thank you, Sarah.
And enjoy, very happy birthday to the business tomorrow. And here's to, you know, to another year of huge progress and success, and look forward to having you back.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much indeed. Thanks. Okay, bye-bye.